Hi guys, Howard again. After reviewing the nicknamed Poor Man's Leica, the Yashica Electro GSN last time around, I thought perhaps I should review the real Poor Man's Leica, the Fed 1/Zorki 1. Before we have a close look at it, a small bit of history. To those in the know, the camera is obviously an exact copy of the Leica 2 brought out in 1932. It didn't take the Russians long though, and in 1934 the USSR's Fed factory started producing their copy of the Leica. They made them in the millions, called them the Fed 1, and continued up to 1955. There were 12 versions during this time, with improvements along the way, but with basically the same copy Leica body. Production was falling behind in 1948, so in 1949 the KMZ factory was brought in to supplement the production, and these cameras became the Zorki 1, and from 1950 began producing them through to 1956, with 5 different versions, once again all using that same Leica 2 body design. Minus the 4th version of the Zorki, the 1D. Okay, let's have a look at my pretty little Zorki. Okay, so I think we've all got to admit it's a very interesting and pretty looking little camera. It is quite small actually. For rangefinders of the era, it's much more compact and quite a bit smaller. And of course, with this particular lens on board, you can turn it to the left and push it in. So it then became quite a pocketable, a coat pocket, or jacket pocketable camera. Okay, pull it out and lock it, turn it right. The lens itself is the copy of the Leica lens. It's not an exact copy. The lens design is different, but visually it's virtually exactly the same. It's the Industar 22, 50mm f3.5, and the apertures are selected with this little ring around the front here between 3.5 and 16. Not the most elegant design, but then again, the camera is the design is over 90 years old. Around the outer flat ring here is the distance scale, and in here is the depth of field scale with the little black marker as the midpoint. So depending on where you've got it on the distance ring, you get the depth of field there. Okay, now this particular lens, they vary a bit, but this one's got a little push-in spring-loaded button because it's normally locked on infinity. It's up against a little stop here. It's locked in infinity. You press it in and turn it to focus, and it goes around to roughly from 1 meter to infinity, and it locks up in that position. Now all the lens were removable in the Leicas and the Russian copies. This one is no exception. So to remove it, you press it in, drag it around, and it comes up against another little stop on this side, and then you can get your finger under that and unscrew the whole thing. And of course it'll take a whole range of different lenses of different focal lengths and things, but basically it's the Leica 39mm screw mount design. So that's how the L39 M39 got their name. It's a 39mm screw thread. All right, pop it back in. Easier said than done. There we go. And to tighten it up, you bring it up against this little stop, and then you can tighten it. All right, it's got its 2 little eyes up here that are the 2 rangefinder windows with a viewfinder window in the middle, and which is a little bit different. And on the back there's 2 windows, but we'll get to that. So basically that's the front. There's no flash socket or anything like that. Can't take flash with this. Not back in those days. Anyhow, not with this camera. We'll get around to the top. Now we've got the rewind knob, which lifts up. There's a little arrow on that to show which direction to go. The name is Zorki. Now I think this is a domestic model, because I've read somewhere that the export models, the word Zorki was actually engraved into it, whereas this is just stamped in. So, and this came from Ukraine, so it probably was a domestic model. The cold shoe, obviously not for a flash, but you can use it for viewfinders for different length lenses and that sort of thing. We've got the shutter speeds. It's a focal plane, cloth focal plane shutter. Now, back in this era, keeping in mind that this is a 1932 designed camera, it's got a strange range of shutter speeds. So there's a little marking for a Z, which is equivalent to B, so the shutter will stay open for as long as you press the button. And then you've got a 20th, a 30th, a 40th, a 60th, a 100th, a 200th, and a 500th. So they're not exactly evenly graduated, and later models, I think, of the Fed actually put some more normal shutter speeds in there, but this was the second last of the Zorkis, and they were still using these shutter speeds. So all a bit odd, but still, it worked. We've got the shutter button here, the film advance knob. In the front here, we've got a little lever that you have to pull out and swing around to disengage the film winding mechanism so you can rewind the film. So that's what that's for. Bring that back around. Okay, click back in, okay. Now, you might notice that as you can see, a little arrow, that's the way you turn it. As I'm turning it, the shutter speeds are turning. And the important thing to remember with all these cameras, and the later ones, and the ones that were sort of the Zorki 3s and Zorki 4s and Zorki 5s and things, and the Fed equivalents, all had this same, basically the same mechanism. And it means that you can't change the shutter speed safely unless it's fully wound on and cocked. So once it's wound on and cocked, you can then lift this up, change the speed to whatever you want, put it down again, and you're okay. But you must always be fully wound on and cocked before you change the shutter speeds. Otherwise, you can do quite a bit of damage to the internals of the camera. It's got a frame counter here. The trick with this is it's got little bumps on it. You get your fingernail, turn it around, and once you've got your film loaded and everything, you just set it to 2 before 0, and then by the time you've taken the first 2 to get rid of the exposed film, then you're ready to go. Okay, so it's pretty simple. It's not, well, as you can see, there's not a lot going on. Now, if we go to the back, we've got 2 little windows which correspond with these 2 windows here. Obviously, one working through a prism. Now, the one on the left is the actual rangefinder. It's a separate window in this camera. It's like a telephoto, and even with glasses, you can see to focus perfectly well. However, with glasses, you can't see the viewfinder, the front frame, so you're not exactly sure what you're getting. The optics in it are such that if you take your glasses off, unless you've got really bad vision, you can at least see what you're taking, and you will be able to see the front frame, so that's good. So, but it means the inconvenience of taking your glasses on and off all the time. I guess you can stick them on top of your head, but anyhow, that's a real trap. Now, you might have noticed that this body is basically one piece. So how do you put the film in? Well, this is where these cameras show their age. Down on the bottom here, you lift that up and rotate it, and that loosens the bottom. Okay, so as you can see, there's a peg there and a little thing. So you put that on first to put the bottom on, and then swing that in. Okay. Now there's the underneath. These are two little mechanisms to adjust the spring tension for the shutter, what leaves isn't quite the right word, the two blinds, the shutter blinds. Now, the way I put the film in this, and I don't recommend it, but it's one way of doing it. If I remove the lens, make sure it's cocked, put the shutter on Z, there's the little arrow on the cold shooter, so it's on Z. Now if I fire it, it opens the blinds fully and I can see what's going on. Because what you have to do, the take-up spool pulls out. It's got a little film trapping mechanism in it, so you tuck the lip of the film under there. You get it the right length apart from the actual film cassette, and you've got to slide them all in together. Now, as I say, I don't recommend this method. You can do it, but the best method is to actually, you can buy it's an outline of the correct shape of the leader that you have to cut the leader. And so you can buy these, you can put them on top of the film, you can cut the leader to that shape, and then that leader, once you tuck it into the take-up spool and have the right amount of film stretched out and everything, it should slide up successfully into this gap without catching on anything. But so you're sliding this in, you're sliding the cassette in and the film in all at once. As I say, I haven't got one of those, so I do it the way I do it. But I really wouldn't recommend that, because you've got to know what you're doing and make sure you don't get anything trapped anywhere. Otherwise, once again, you can damage the film sprockets and things. But anyway, so that's a bit of a nightmare with these cameras. Unfortunately, they're not the easiest camera in the world to load or to put the lens back in. Come on, I did the right before. There we go. Okay. So that's the little Zorki one. Now, despite the word Russian made has a bad name on it, attached to it, undeservedly so in a lot of cases. I mean, this particular one is a very nicely made little camera. It works perfectly and can basically do everything, 95% of everything the equivalent Leica can do. The lens is lovely and sharp, the rangefinder is clear, and the viewfinder is fine. Everything works absolutely fine on it. And they were a very good little camera for a fraction of the cost of the original Leica model. So don't be put off if you can get a good one of these. And quality control did vary a bit between the factories and the different ages and everything, but most of them are basically good, solid, reliable little cameras capable of very good photos. Okay, so that's it, the Zorki one, which is exactly the same as the Fed one, except for the badging. Okay, well look, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please like and subscribe. I mean, it's free to subscribe and helps the little channel along. I'd really like to get to 1,000 subscribers if possible from my current 840 odd, to provide perhaps a little income and perhaps buy some more interesting cameras to review. Anyhow, so look, thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.